If you've ever gotten a letter from the DMV and thought, I'll deal with this later, you're definitely not alone. DMV mail is confusing, intimidating, and usually written in a way that doesn't clearly explain what's actually happening. So in this video, I want to explain, in plain English, what usually happens if you ignore a DMV letter, how it escalates, and what you can do to stop it from turning into a bigger problem. A letter from the DMV usually isn't random. It's typically triggered by something in their system, like an expired registration, missing insurance information, unpaid fees, a ticket, or documentation they're waiting on. The important thing to understand is that these letters are almost always administrative, not criminal. They're basically the DMV saying, there's an issue on your record and here's the deadline to fix it. Ignoring the first DMV letter usually doesn't cause immediate, extreme consequences. Most of the time, the first notice is a warning or a request for action, but it is almost always includes a deadline, and that deadline is what really matters. Once the deadline passes, the system starts moving automatically. When a DMV deadline is missed, the consequences tend to escalate in steps. At first, this might mean your registration is flagged, you're blocked from renewing tags, or your license is marketed as non-compliant. You usually don't even feel the impact until you try to do something, like renew your registration or deal with another issue, and suddenly you're stuck. This is where a lot of confusion comes in. A license suspension means your driving privileges are temporarily taken away until you complete certain requirements. A revocation is more serious. It means your license is taken away completely and you have to reapply after a waiting period. Ignoring DMV letters is far more likely to lead to a suspension, not a revocation, especially at first. If the DMV notices continue to be ignored, you can face things like license suspension, registration holds, added fines, or reinstatement fees. That can create real-world problems, like not being able to drive legally, trouble commuting to work, or paying more just to get back into compliance. The original issue might have been small, but the penalties stack up over time. The reason this escalates is because the DMV systems are mostly automated. If you don't respond by the deadline, the system assumes you're not complying and automatically moves to the next step. Each missed step adds another requirement, another fee, another form, another hoop to jump through. That's how people end up overwhelmed by something that started off simple. There's a lot of fear around DMV letters, but most of the time, ignoring one notice does not mean instant arrest, a warrant, or police showing up at your door. Those outcomes are usually tied to court orders, repeated violations, or continuing to drive while knowingly suspended, not just missing one letter. That doesn't mean ignoring it is safe. It just means the consequences are usually slower and more administrative at first. If you've already ignored a DMV letter, the best thing you can do is stop avoiding it and deal with it as soon as possible. Open the mail, check the deadline, see exactly what they're asking for. In many cases, fixing the issue quickly can prevent additional penalties from being added. Most DMV issues are resolved by doing one or more of the following: providing documentation, paying a fee, correcting information on file, or completing a required step online or in person. It's rarely as complicated as people fear, but it does get more complicated the longer it's delayed. To avoid problems like this in the future, make sure your address is always updated with the DMV so you actually receive notices. If you don't understand what a letter means, contact the DMV directly or check their website. Clarification early is much easier than damage control later. Most of these systems are manageable when you deal with them early. DMV letters aren't written to be clear. They're written to enforce rules. Understanding what they actually mean and how the system works behind the scenes helps you avoid unnecessary stress, fees, and bigger problems. That's the goal of this channel. explaining everyday adult responsibilities in plain English before they snowball into something worse.